Thank you and welcome to the 2023 Iowa City Book Festival, presented by the Iowa City UNESCO City of Literature. We would like to thank the sponsors and partners that made this event possible: the City of Iowa City, the University of Iowa, the Iowa City Public Library, Prairie Lights, Iowa Public Radio, the Graduate Hotel, and Think Iowa City. Support was also provided by the Iowa Humanities Council and the National Endowment for the Humanities. Please join me in welcoming Christopher Merrill.
Thank you, Rachel. It's wonderful to be back as part of the Iowa City Book Festival. Welcome to the Friday panel series of the International Writing Program's Fall Residency. For those of you who are new to our programming, we've given our writers a topic to consider and present to you today. Copies of their précis will be available next week on our website at iwp.uiowa.edu, where you can also find biographies and writing samples from our writers and a schedule of our upcoming events. You can also find this information by scanning the QR code on the bookmarks available at the back of the room. And now for today's panel, On the Body. A person's body affects the way they navigate the world and their experiences in it. How much power does a body with regard to, for instance, race, gender, sexuality, physical ability, have over or in an artist's work? And with what devices can a writer affect issues their body can present, for instance, via symbolism or by changing media or in the physical circumstances of reading and writing? The first writer, we're actually lined up differently. Yeah, you have shuffled. Okay, then. I was looking at Kevin and saying, that is not Busi. The Taiwanese author Kevin Chen started his career as a cinema and theater actor and eventually became a correspondent for a Taiwanese TV network in Berlin, Germany, where he now resides. He has published several novels, essays, and short story collections in Taiwan, for which he has won a number of literary awards. His first English publication, the novel Ghost Town, translated by Darryl Sterk, was reviewed by the New York Times, NPR, Publishers Weekly, etc. It was also placed on the list of Best Books of World Literature 2022 by the Library Journal and on the 2023 long list of Penn Translation Prizes. Ghost Town has been or will be translated into 11 languages, and his participation in the Fall Residency was made possible by the American Institute in Taiwan. Sitting next to him now, Busisiwe Mahlangu is a writer and performer from Pretoria, South Africa. Her debut collection, Surviving Loss, was adapted for South African State Theater. She was a fellow at the Johannesburg Institute for Advanced Study and is currently working on a second poetry manuscript, A Body Makes Fire. She has performed her work all over South Africa and on international stages, including in Lesotho, Mozambique, Sweden, Nigeria, and the USA. She holds a BA in creative writing from the University of South Africa. She was awarded the inaugural South African National Poetry Prize, and her work has been published in Kalahari Review, Ja Magazine, Best New African Poets, Atlanta Review, and Wild Imperfections, among many others. When she is not writing, she makes beaded jewelry and accessories, and her participation in the Fall Residency was made possible by the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs at the U.S. Department of State. Finally, to her left, we have Wesley Macheso, who is a Malawian writer, editor, and academic. He holds a PhD from Stellenbosch University and currently serves as an associate professor of literature and creative writing at the University of Malawi. He's the author of the poetry collection, A Masquerade of Spirits, and his children's book, Ozike and the Gods, won the 2015 Per Gunt Literary Award. Several of his poems are anthologized in Wreaths for a Wayfarer, and his short story, This Land Is Mine, is published in Waternew Short Fiction from Africa. His latest short story appears in the anthology Voices That Sing Behind the Veil, and he was shortlisted for the Miles Moreland Writing Scholarship in both 2020 and 2022. He is currently at work on his first novel, and some of his writing can be read online in the publications African Writer, Brittle Paper, the Kalahari Review, and Agboa. He edits for AfricanWriter.com and AfricanWords.com, and his participation in the Fall Residency was made possible by the U.S. Department of State, courtesy of the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. Kevin, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Page 3, because we shuffled. So. I disliked my body. No, I would need stronger verbs. Despised, loathed, hated, scorned. I need a thesaurus to gather all the synonyms which might fully manifest my disgust. 18 years, my own body disgusted me for 18 years. Until the English department. The cohort of IWP 2023 was invited to dine with the Department of English. At the table with the PhD candidates and the faculty, Noel Q. De Jesus suddenly started singing a song from the Tony Award-winning musical Avenue Q, titled, "What Do You Do with a BA in English?" Noel, I'm gonna do, okay, now, what do you do with a BA in English? What is my life going to be? 4 years of college and plenty of knowledge have earned me this useless degree. Okay, stop. You bet I have shared this song with my English department girls. My girls, my eternal friends. 25 years after graduation, we have carried this useless degree and become the best versions of ourselves. Mothers, editors, managers, translators, headhunters, bankers, me, useless writer. The truth is that these English department girls saved my life. It was 1994 when I began to study at the English department at Furen University, Furen Dashi in Taiwan. Pretty much like all English departments in the world, the students were mostly girls. I was a closeted small-town gay boy with 7 sisters. Being in a feminine environment eliminated my freshman anxiety. This felt like home. So many girls, so many sisters. For a few seconds, the mega city of Taipei did not scare me that much. But would the girls like me? Would they smell my queerness? Would they tolerate my awkwardness? Would they like my new shirts? What about my hair? I feel awful. My English is so bad. They must have seen through me. This was all a big mistake. Yes, they did smell my queerness, and they included me right away. I remember the first confusing semester of navigating through the mist of William Faulkner, Shirley Jackson, Eugene O'Neill, James Joyce, and Virginia Woolf. I joined several study groups to dissect Macbeth. We failed miserably. Captain Ahab used too many difficult words. WTF is necrophilia when we analyze Faulkner. Cliff notes were not a helpful singing fairy godmother. We were so frustrated that we ended up drawing a time machine on a napkin in a cafe, which might bring us back to the 19th century to murder Hawthorne before he started painting the Scarlet Letter. As a freshman full of malicious thoughts about murdering authors, I was happy for the very first time. I thought studying, by which I mean cursing Shakespeare, was delightful. Time spent with the girls was full of laughter, pure joy. What's this? A brand new emotion. I was not pretending to be someone else. The girls caught me gawking at the boy working at the cafeteria. Then he kissed the girl. I was heartbroken for 3 seconds. They hugged me and told me that I could do so much better. They cousined me, they sistered me, they mothered me. I shook off my insecurity and started to establish my voice. I told them that I aspired to be a writer. One girl said, "Darling, no doubt you will be the Taiwanese Tennessee Williams, even gayer." Allow me to tell you about my bitter days before the English department. In middle school, my homeroom teacher called me a pervert for reading a boy's poem. I defended myself by telling her that I was predicting his future wife by reading the lines in his poem. She continued to say that homosexuals were all infected with HIV. In high school, it didn't get any better. It was a boys' high school. Being different was not an option. Honestly, it was a public hazard. Teachers told us gays and lesbians were all cursed by God. Bullies found out I was writing poems on the pages of math textbooks and declared that I must be gay. They shouted, "Poetry is gay." One boy slapped me in the restroom and said, "Sook me," in English, in broken English. He said that he picked up the phrase from some porn. I corrected his poor pronunciation and ran. He hit me again and threatened that the whole school would find out I was gay the next day. I rang and rang and rang and rang. I decided to kill myself that afternoon. I couldn't tell anyone about the burning sensation on my face. Not even my best friend knew about this. I just wanted to end this misery. Since it was going to be my last day on Earth, I wanted to have fun. I went to Blockbuster. Remember Blockbuster? Yeah. I went to Blockbuster to get the VHS of Out of Africa. My sister cooked for me, and we watched some silly primetime TV drama. She went to bed. I got a knife from the kitchen. I started watching Meryl Streep. Her Danish accent made me cry. I adore her. I wanted to have that kind of adventure. I wanted to go to Africa and become a writer just like Karen Blixen. The knife followed me to the bed. The silver of the knife was shrieking. I suddenly remembered that I had not finished my novel. I had to know how the novel ended before I died. I plunged into the book and the words were in my eyes. The book silenced the knife. I was ravenous for food by the end of the book. I tiptoed to the kitchen and started eating the leftovers. I continued to read by the refrigerator light. My gosh, how I loved eating and reading. I fell asleep on the couch. My sister's breakfast woke me up. She couldn't find the big knife. I was hungry again. I never had to come out to my English department girls. They just knew. Studying Jane Austen with them stopped my suicidal thoughts. I wanted to move to London and become a great Taiwanese novelist. One girl shouted in the most dramatic way, "Go, Kevin, go to London and get your Mr. Darcy. Don't forget to get me a Mr. Bingley who owns a Riverview flat." I never went to London and never conjured up Mr. Darcy. I did become a novelist. Perhaps not so great, but alive, writing. Let's go back to that song from Avenue Q. Noel, I need your help. And pay the bills yet, 'cause I have no skills yet. The world is a big, scary place, but somehow I can shake the feeling I might make a difference to the human race. Yep, I'm gonna rap, but it's okay. I was in Hanoi, Vietnam, this summer to promote the Vietnamese translation of Ghost Town. As I was signing the books, one shy boy whispered in trembling tones into my ears in English, "Thank you, Mr. Chen, because I read your book. I don't kill myself. Thank you." He ran away. Tears welled up in my eyes. This useless writer did make a difference. I would like to wrap up with my girls here in Iowa City. Noelle could smell my queerness from the portrait published in the IWP social media pages. Mary, here, where are you, Mary? Mary told me about her gay cousin in Fiji. Gay as shit, just like you, Kevin. We laughed our heads off. I safeguard this kind of profanity shared only by loving family and friends. Always the girls, they help me discover and validate that my body exuberates queerness, that queerness is my superpower.
Okay, page 1. When I find myself stuck in my writing, I ask myself questions. My favorite is, where in the body does the poem live? Which part of me houses the story? Which part communicates back? For writing is a reciprocal dance of receiving and giving, of listening and responding. This interplay is not confined to the dynamic between the writer and the reader, but extends to the act of writing and the resulting creation. Poetry, in its essence, is a labor of emotions, a realm of challenges and invocations, while the body is a reservoir of sensations, experiences, and emotions. I believe that in paying close attention to how the poem recites within one's body, one can discover new thinking. My body serves as a vessel in this transaction, both on stage and on paper. The body is the one that bears witness. Our feelings, our utmost genuine pets to knowledge, they're chaotic, sometimes painful, sometimes contradictory, but they come from the deep within us, and we must key into the feelings. This is how new visions begin, and those are the words of Audre Lorde. In 2016, Fees Must Fall protests took place all across South African universities. I was a student at Wits University then. After what felt like an endless attack of rubber bullets and tear gas, I watched 3 women students stripped naked in front of armed police. They marched towards the police with their hands raised. It was a clear display and reminder that as students, we were unarmed, that we wanted nothing more than free and equal education. Days later, I would read online posts and articles trying to reduce this act of bravery into a debate about the women's bodies. It is also important how we write about women and their bodies, in literature, in spaces of protest, in everyday, simply. It was one of the loudest forms of resistance I've ever seen. Language takes on different shapes in practice, in movement, in acts. Sometimes words are not enough because no one will listen, because there's no time to talk or write when only surviving. But if the body is an archival site for memory, then stories cannot die. And in this way, memory can be inherited. As a student who was relearning resistance songs in distress in a democratic South Africa, I was hopeless about the future. But there are moments that allows cracks to open and hope slips in. The Fees Must Fall protest that day in front of the Great Hall was painful, but also hopeful in some ways. In writing, I'm trying to find ways of resistance and protest, of forging new paths and imagining the future. Sometimes, when words cannot do that, I look to history. I look to the people that have done this. There's a long recorded archive, and some of it, we can already access it through ourselves. Our bodies are our inheritance, our legacy, our archive. And as writers, we must bear witness. I'll share a poem now. Silence as prayer. Even if we don't speak, the language of the heart survives. The heart bears too much. It's just blood and muscle. Cannot show you the way to tomorrow. Cannot break the meeting of your fears. Cannot clean up the mess in your mind. You close your eyes and pray it away. You trust your gut again. Silence as sacrifice. You give your mouth to someone for safekeeping. They teach it how to say your name wrong. Your tongue is a thing history scolds, a wood statue. Chop off this side, you will be beautiful. Chop off that side, you will disappear. You sound like you swallowed a swarm of bees. You will not taste honey poisoning yourself this way. Silence as death. The blood remembers. There is nothing to fear. Blood moans in a body, gutters the ghosts of the past and bleeds the memories. You are meant to feel. You are meant to heal. Wash the blood that consumes freedom. Silence as secrets. Where is the unspoken, the silenced bodies, the unjust, language being bent for an image? Thank you.
All right, good afternoon. A person's body affects the way they navigate the world and their experiences in it, since bodies are subject to social strictures and cultural matrices beyond the individual. As a cultural script, the human body is led variously by different social orders, which in panoptic fashion regulate how it must present and perform according to their biases and preconceptions. The very definition of the body in the English dictionary as the physical structure of a person or an animal is limited. Firstly, it emphasizes corporeality, deliberately leaving out the mind, which is not seen as being part of the body. Such renditions point to Cartesian binary thinking and notions of otherness, which produce discourses of exclusion that have perpetuated racism, sexism, compulsory able-bodiedness, and compulsory homosexuality, among others. The juxtaposition of light and darkness to contrast Europe from Africa in Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, for instance, is a stark example of such thinking. In that novel, the European is the mind, the African, the body. Ironically, defining the body as a separate and independent entity also renders it unique, according it agency for creative impulse, a sense that there are no general rules to occupying a body and or representing it. Consequently, we come to realize that not all bodies are equal. The privileged body, which is considered the subject, must have some cultural and socio-political power to occupy and maintain that position. And this is usually the body of a heterosexual white middle-class man. Then there are bodies that manifest as objects in mainstream cultures, those on whom things may be done without consequences, what Michel Foucault calls docile bodies, the objects. These may include racial minorities, queer people, and women on the margins. And Julia Kristeva posits that some bodies cannot be classified as above and are rendered abject, the jettisoned object radically excluded. This is just how challenging it is to live in a body. You become an entity to be defined and regulated. Other times, you become nothing. Considering this, it is important to talk about the power that embodiment has on an artist's work and to try and fashion tools for best representing bodies that are often on the margins. Some critics have proposed that marginalized identities must shoulder the burden of representing themselves in literature. The argument is that living in a certain body offers you the privilege of experiencing what it means to be in that condition. And as such, your narration of that experience should be more trustworthy than that of someone who lacks the same. So gay people must write about gay lives, black people about blackness, and the disabled should be trusted with stories of disability, and so on. Then who will tell the story of someone who is deaf, blind, and cannot speak? To me, such a perspective is as limited as the dictionary definition of the body itself. To begin with, every lived experience is different, and no two bodies have exactly the same encounter. My experience as a black man in a modern city in Malawi is not the same as that of another man living in some remote village there. The stories that can be told by a transgender woman in Iowa cannot be the same as what can be told by a trans woman in the South Bronx. Human experiences are very much shaped by forces outside the body. And identifying with a group of people due to similar embodiment does not guarantee similar experiences. As such, we cannot attach authenticity to representations in narratives simply because they are told by a writer in a certain body. That in itself is stereotypical. All creative writing either fictional or autobiographical, is a product of recollection and imagination. When readers approach literary texts, they should not be looking for facts and or hard truths, but rather possibilities and alternatives. And when you ask, what are the devices that a writer can use to sail through the turbulent waters of difference? My answer is two-pronged. One, imagination. Two, socio-political intelligence. On imagination, the American poet Phyllis Wheatley writes, imagination, who can sing thy force? We on thy pinions can surpass the wind and leave the rolling universe behind. Here, the persona attests to the power of imagination in transcending spaces, situations, and I may add, embodiment. That's what creative writing should do. I believe a writer's greatest asset is their ability to imagine otherworldliness. Writers must be able to create possible worlds and modes of being beyond themselves. The writer's body must not be a border. To quote Edgar, embodiment must rather be the point where something begins its essential unfolding. Writers must be allowed to imagine and represent different bodies and experiences, even beyond the world as we know it. On social political intelligence, a writer must be conscious of the world around them. They must discern the biases and historical inequalities that have shaped dominant cultures and be cautious not to replicate them in their writing. In the end, good writing must work towards mobility, enablement, and queering discourses. A reader must walk out of your story defamiliarized. Creativity must transcend the shores of what is and soar towards what could be. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Every week I imagined the presentations cannot get better than the week before, but this was really out of this world. Now we'll open it up for questions, and I hope that you will wait until Ida can get to you with the microphone so that the audience at home can hear the question. And while you're formulating your questions, let me tell you about some upcoming events. Join us later today at 5 p.m. for the next event in our weekly Shamba House reading series featuring that singer Noel Q de Jesus, who is from Singapore, and Priyadala, who is from South Africa. Light refreshments will be served. Tonight at 8 o'clock in 120 Phillips Hall, if you have room on your plate for one more reading, there will be an evening of bilingual readers and poetry talks featuring writers from the Fall Residency and from Japan. Tomorrow at 1:30, we'll host our annual collaboration with the Department of Dance as part of Hansher's Infinite Dream Festival. Come to Space Place Theater in North Hall. Admission is free and open to the public, but seating may fill up fast. This Sunday at 4 p.m., our Prairie Lights reading series will feature Eva Wong, who is from Hong Kong, Ia Kiva, who's from Ukraine, and nonfiction MFA candidate Bela Shalyevich. We hope to see you there. Afterward, that same Sunday at 7 o'clock in room 105 of the Adler Journalism Building, our Cinematheque series will screen the film Politiki Cuzino, introduced by Nectaria Anastasiadou. The film will be followed by a brief Q&A. This Wednesday at 1:30, come to room 104 of the English Philosophy Building for a conversation on the Hong Kong literary scene between Fall Residency writers Tammy Lee Ming Ho and Eva Wong, as well as Jennifer Feely, who has translated work by both. Also this Wednesday, come to Stanley Cafe in Hansher Auditorium at 5 o'clock for a panel entitled Reflecting the Infinite Dream, Visions of the American Story. This will be our second Infinite Dream Festival event featuring presentations by 5 of our writers. On Thursday, join us at 4 p.m. in this very room of the Iowa City Public Library for a bilingual reading featuring 7 Fall Residency writers who work with Chinese languages to varying degrees. And finally, we hope you'll join us here again next Friday, October 20th at noon for another discussion panel featuring Brenda Navarro, Guru Ladaki, and Artur Domoslawski, who will respond to the question, must a migrant be grateful? And with that, I'll open it up to questions from the audience. This is actually an amazing scene. No questions. Silence. Oh, now it begins.
Thank you. My name is Hazan Nori. I'm from Pakistan. My question is to Kevin.
Why me? Okay, please.
Because I liked your paper.
Thank you. I hate you.
Okay. Okay. This gay people are very much common in Pakistan as well. And this is mostly the effect of repression, because in Pakistan mostly women and men don't mingle each other, except some institutions. Socially, women and men don't mingle. So out of that repression, gayism also emerges in Pakistan. Okay. But even when we were in schools, we also experience such things. Some guys, some boys were bullied by the others, like you mentioned in your paper. But my question is, what is the exact point of resistance? Because when we were in school, a guy would bully or try to touch the boy would resist. Sometimes they report to the teachers, they report to the headmasters, of course, and they would tell the family, and the bully boy would always face the consequences. Okay? So except from writing, telling this narrative and these stories, what is the point of resistance?
I never resisted, seriously. I was very passive when I was in high school. I just took it all in me. I never spoken about it. I did write a lot in my diary, which I found very therapeutic, for myself. But in that system, I couldn't resist because I knew very well that resistance was also dangerous because bullies had their privileges. Oftentimes, they were the sports students, meaning they're the football, well, we didn't have football, basketball stars, right? And so they were privileged, and my resistance wouldn't have been effective. So my strategies, I just kept everything to myself. That's why I was a sad teenage boy with suicidal thoughts, And yeah, and I didn't have any people to help me. There was no, resources in the school that could have supported me. I didn't have anyone to turn to. But I'm going to tell you something very cliche, which is, I just told you that I found writing therapeutic. I always felt better after I wrote all about my secrets in my diary. But I want to tell you, going to the Blockbuster and getting all the VHS tapes and getting books from public libraries really helped me a lot as a sad, a pathetic teenage closet gay boy, because these VHS tapes, they gave me windows, they gave me hopes and prospects, telling me that if I got out of this small town, I could be a happy person. So I was always watching Meryl Streep. There's a thing about, the gay people and the Meryl Streep. It's like we adore Meryl Streep. I don't know why. And of course, Bette Midler. Of course, Barbra Streisand. I was singing all the way through Yentl until my sister threatened to strangle me. Shut up, Kevin, shut up. Yeah, but that was a way of me. When I was singing Barbra Streisand, Baba, can you hear me? That was somehow my way of resisting in me, because in that whole system, no one could have helped me. And I never came out to people. I never came out to my sisters. They just knew, but how could they have helped me? Because this is 80s and early 90s, no one could help me. And there was this film that I recommend everyone to see, which was a Taiwanese film, 1989, 1990. It's called Wedding Banquet by Ann Lee. The Taiwanese director actually was nominated as one of the best foreign pictures, motion pictures in the Oscar that year. I saw that in the cinema in 1990, 1989, and that saved me big time because it was about interracial gay relationship in New York, a Taiwanese gay guy, an American gay guy. And they had to fake a marriage with a girl from Shanghai. And eventually it led to some kind of farce, but it's a wonderful film. And seeing that representation really saved me. And I just quickly wrapping up. There was the American actor who was playing Simon in that film. There was a a gay relationship with Simon and Wei Tong, the Taiwanese gay guy and American gay guy Wei Tong. Years later, I finally saw him as in person in Berlinale, in Berlin Film Festival. He actually became a director, and he came to Berlin Film Festival, and I was translating for a film that before his film, because he actually was presenting his film. And I saw him, and I was like, my God, he's the older version of Simon. And I just really said that, I said, because his name was Simon in that film, and I couldn't help myself. I just said, thank you, Simon. And he looked confused. He was like, and yeah, and it's like a war film, and suddenly there were like 50,000 people in between us, and then we were washed away. But I was like, Simon, thank you, bye. Yeah. And he was very confused. Now, but for me, that was a personal revelation, right? So I went through that, I navigated through that, but I never resisted. And I'm really happy now because when I go back to the high school to talk about this, they do have support system now. They have people to look up to now. And I saw gay couples and lesbian couples or whatever couples, thruples, in the school system, and they were happy. And we have legalized same-sex marriage in Taiwan as well. So somehow, we went through a lot, and they have their different ways of resisting now. But in my generation, we just shut up and try to survive.
At the beginning of the program, Kevin had me promise him that I will not ask him in his
Ali,
Spanish.
shut up.
My question is for Busisiwe and Wesley. I mean, we know that illusions, at least it's one of my beliefs, that illusions are a good reservoir for creation. And the source of illusion is the imperfection of our bodies. So if my eyes show me something differently, I'll write about it in that fashion, which is different to Mansoura or any other reader or any other colleague, which will seem creative, but sometimes it is distorted. One more thing about my beliefs, that the body is a limitation to the spirit, holding it with weaknesses like the need to sleep, the need to eat, from achieving great things. So from your personal experiences, Wesley and Busisiwe, how did... Huh?
Busisiwe.
Busisiwe, okay. Okay, Busisiwe. How did the imperfections of your own bodies and the look and the sensory information you got through your body has affected your writing?
I would hate. Yeah. Okay. How has my perception of my body, my experiences in my body affected my writing? It has, I think, in a way shaped my writing, because when I started writing, I wrote firstly for myself, but then when I started sharing my work, I technically became a performer. And so some of the work, the way it's written, it's how I imagine it will sound or look on stage. So there's some translation between the stage and the paper. So some of the writing, really, the vividness of the poem, the images, is how the body as a performer on stage will be able to reflect that. So when writing poetry, there's been a direct relationship between the body as a performer and the body as a writer, is that it has sort of given me a way, my poems live in my body. And because as a writer, or as just anyone, we experience the world through our bodies, that has helped me to actually write and to listen to my body. There's a saying in isiZulu, when you're not feeling well or you just want to rest or you just want to unplug from the world, it says ukuzimamela, which means to listen to your body. Whatever your body says, the body sort of acts as, it will tell you if something is wrong, whether something happening outside the body or that's happening within. It will tell you, it will let you know of the injustices, it will let you know of the sickness in the body or in the world outside. So I find it very important to listen to the body, because I write from feeling, and sometimes I don't have the language for what I want to say. But in listening to my body, I actually find like I'm forming a new language or translating what the body feels like. And that has been a very important point of departure for me.
All right. With me, it's really a very difficult question to answer. Yeah. So, but personally, when I write, I don't really intend to write about myself. So I write about the world and people and relationships in there. But I'm sure that there is a point where maybe I can use some of the experiences that I've had with my body, to communicate maybe feelings like love. If I'm to write about love, I'll have to imagine how does love feel like, and maybe part of that imagination may come from my own experiences. So there are definitely those moments, but it's not something I can point at to say, this is it, this is it. So even if I'm to write, for example, about myself, suppose I'm writing an autobiography, I'll have to get out of my body and then look at it, from the outside to say, okay, so that's how this body must experience the world or experiences the world. It's not necessarily a factual narrative. It's just my imagination of how I can, experience the world. So I don't really know at what point I use my bodily experiences in work, but it must be there somewhere. Yeah.
Is there time to ask questions? Yes. Okay. I'm be speaking from the other side. Kevin just talked about how books and VHS helped him cope with it, and I grew up in a boarding school, and there was a lot of bullying, and lot of times senior boys would prey on the little boys, so that kind of put me off a lot for a long time, and I never had gay friends. But then it was a film like Philadelphia when it came out in '92, and it just, it changed everything. My perspective, it changed 180 degrees. And therefore, I don't know whether there's a question in here, but when I hear Busisiwe, she could be my sister. I can really relate to that, and her pain. So, and it's so important that even people who are not, who are straight, but who are open, just being open and being exposed to films. Of course, now it's far better world, but still in places like in India, only recently they've been decriminalized, but still there is no same-sex marriage allowed. So a lot of things need to change, but so as I said, it was great hearing your perspective, and I really value that. Thank you.
So on the topic of the body in writing, I often find that when I'm feeling disconnected from the story or the writer, I find that the writing has gone a little bit general or it's going too political. Are there moments in your own writing where you find the body is distanced from your work and on a regular, consistent basis? What are those subjects that you're dealing with, or what are those emotions that you're dealing with that you find the body removed, and how do you bring it back?
I was thinking.
Okay, then I will say something. For me, writing is always a very physical experience, because we have a lot of writers in the room. Now we know that when we are writing, it's very unhealthy. We are chained to the desks, and we have terrible posture, and we are rotten inside, and so it's not a good physical thing to do, and it's not sports. Because, you ask around, all the writers, we have terrible elbows and terrible shoulders, and we cannot even afford therapy, and like shoulder massage or something, But for me, it's always a very emotional and physical journey. So I'm never detached, actually. I'm always very involved. I'm trying very hard to be detached, but I could never. I don't know why. I cry. I speak to myself. I'm basically like an insane person when I do that. For me, it's a very theatrical experience when I write. So, no, I cannot relate to that because I'm just a crazy person. What about you? You guys?
Okay, I've had moments where I felt like I'm detached, like myself or my body is detached from the work. And as well, I do understand that not everything I write has to take up this big space in my life or in my body. And some poems I do have room to allow that to happen. I think each poem has its own function. Each story has its own function and it will do its own work in its own way. And sometimes is to allow the discomfort, is to allow the detachment, especially for someone like me who's been writing mostly from my body and from what I witness, what I observe. Sometimes I do allow myself to step out of like the everyday practice that I have as a writer and try to find new ways of writing. And some of that leads to actually detaching and distancing myself from the work. I do allow that discomfort to happen. I feel like sometimes that's how new thinking comes about. And it is okay sometimes to detach. Not every political work has to have a personal pathway to it. It can exist even as just being political, can exist even as just being as distance, because sometimes even work like that is necessary.
Yeah, all right, thank you. Well, for me, I think I would answer in the same fashion that I answered early, that it's very difficult to pinpoint something that this is where maybe I feel the body detaching from the work or, being attached to the work. I would rather say I find it very difficult for myself, rather, to be detached from my work. So I would rather use the word the self than the body, because I think that is more encompassing. So when I write something, to let go, it's really hard, because I become part of the work, but like for forever. So it's not easy to let go of myself from my work. Yeah, but specifically about the body, well, I have to think about that. Thank you.
Thank you for all the great presentations from all three of you. I know that I know you personally, but this was, yeah, on a different level. And anyway, the question I have for any of you is, when we talk about bodies and the self, you also come from countries and cultures that have histories. And when we talk about the body, what I wanted to ask was, do you consider or are impacted by, say, historical traumas? And when I say the body, I don't mean the physical body only, but the mind or soul or spirit, whatever we can call it. Yeah, in that fashion. How does that impact your writing?
Should I start again? Okay. Yes. I was growing up. I was born in 1976, so I was growing up in the 80s. In Taiwan, we had this thing called martial law, which was enforced in the year of 1949 after the Civil War in China. And the KMT, the party, the nationals, they came to Taiwan to establish the country called Republic of China, which is not even recognized in this world. And they have People's Republic of China, which is like one of the biggest provinces in the world now. But in Taiwan, we had that thing called martial law, starting from 1949, which only ended in 1988. So these years of martial law, what is martial law? So when I was growing up, gender, this is whatever, were regulated. Even, let me just give you like really ordinary details about what it's like to live under this law. The length of your hair was regulated. So as a girl, you should have long hair. When you have short hair, you're suspicious. And the cops will be out there catching the guys with long hair. and they actually will grab you, and then you were forced to go into the police station, and they will cut your hair right there. So everything was regulated, you know. So of course, even sexuality was regulated, bodies were regulated. What you wear when you're a girl, why don't you wear a skirt? You know, so and especially when it's martial, or when you hear this word martial, that means it really stresses on masculinity, right? So you have to be a macho person when you are a man. So it was basically fundamentally a patriarchal system. And luckily, after we got rid of that in 1989, it took years that we have the first democratic election. And now we have a woman president, which, you know, and in her years, we legalized same-sex marriage, which is still the first and the only one in Asia, which is a shame, you know, because we thought that there would be a domino effect in Asia, that because it has happened and we didn't go to hell, you know, and everything was not burning, you know, because that's what they promised us, you know. Oh, if you legalize same-sex marriage, everything will go to hell, and this will be a burning hell. Nothing happened, you know, and so they were like, oh, nothing happened. So we thought that we could be like a, I don't know, a happy example for other Asian countries, for our neighbors, but it never happened. It's still very difficult in Japan. I mean, Lee Kotomi can talk about that, and Yasu can talk about that. It's very difficult there. It's also, it's virtually impossible in China. In Hong Kong, they're struggling a lot. I mean, we are hoping that maybe Thailand will be the next country. And when we talk about Thailand, of course, they have their traumatic historical experiences that would have like an indelible impact on their bodies as well. So, you know, all these countries, I mean, we are all from countries that you know, somehow bear historical traumatic moments. And that will, of course, will shape our bodies and my physical culture, because I'm what I am today because I went through that.
Yeah, of course. For me, I think you are right, Mary. Yeah, it's very difficult for you to separate like historical traumas from literature, because I think in almost in history, I'll talk about my own country. You realize that in Malawi, when you read on the literature that has been produced in the 60s and 70s and 80s, there is a lot of work that came out of Malawi. And it's because, you know, we are in that transition from colonialism to an independent state. So a lot was written. And when we became independent, there was a dictatorship for 30 years. And during that time, a lot of people wrote against the dictatorship and in very, you know, creative fashion. So a lot of work came out. In South Africa, in the fight against apartheid, a lot of work came out. In Europe, in the world wars, here in America, during the Harlem Renaissance in the 70s. So these historical traumas and reality, social realities always, you know, influence literature. So I cannot say that my work is not influenced by that. It is, because I talk about social realities in a way. You know, there are things I want to talk about in my work, especially maybe speaking against injustice, for example. But I think what is challenging is that as a writer, what do you do so that your work is not reduced to just documenting histories and realities? So you have to find a creative angle, you know, on how to represent these facts. So that's very challenging. So, but as a writer, of course, very influenced by the world around me. Yeah. Sure.
I would like to add to what they both said. It is impossible in a way to run away from like the historical history. It does affect my writing, and also as well with South Africa, like the apartheid South Africa. There's still residues in a democratic South Africa, and so you're constantly reminded of the structure. And if you read the literature of pre-democracy, you get to see that so much of what was happening in apartheid is still standing. There's still segregation in South Africa, and it manifests itself as like economic, where still townships, like schools in townships, are not able to access proper education, where the healthcare in public hospitals in township versus public hospitals in the city have very different levels of care and services. So there's still like something that reminds you of the borders of the country that still segregate people. And the only way to access like a better state of life is to actually have more money. But then it's also like, yeah, like the poverty is systemic. It's not only just an individual choice of saying that I'll work hard, I'll make it a whatnot. So you're constantly reminded of the failures, and you see the holes, and to write on to respond to that. How do you respond to that? How do you just look away and write about something else? Like, I would really love to write about roses, but sometimes I am constantly confronted by the state of the world I come from. I do not always have the time to write about roses or love and the sunshine. I have to write about the pressing matters because they affect me. So it's not an easy thing to just detach, I think.
Do we have time? Yeah. Okay. Actually, I just wanted to ask a question and maybe ask you, Wesley, to clarify something. In your speech, you said women on the margin. So I was wondering, were you talking about a specific group of women that is on the margin, or women generally being in the margin? And in that sense, I would like to ask, all of you, what's your position on treating a body as a subject in the text, especially a female body, because I think throughout the history, the female body has been objectified and sexualized and desexualized in the text. And that is something I stand for, to see the change. And it's a big subject, so I won't go into it. But I think you understand what I'm asking about, I hope. Yeah?
Okay, thank you. So I'll just try to tackle your question. Yeah, I think when I said women on the margins, I wanted it to be that broad because, of course, we know that heteropatriarchal cultures have always relegated women to the margins. So, but the challenges that women face due to heteropatriarchy are not the same. Among maybe there are middle-class women, rich women, poor women, queer women. So there are so many groups of women. So if we talk about, for example, intersectional oppression, so there are a lot of intersectional oppressions, challenges among women. But in general, because we live in heteropatriarchal societies, women are on the margins already. So there are margins within the margins. That's another issue. Yeah, sure.
The second question.
Oh, did you?
The second question, okay. So the second question is very big, it's loaded. And I'm also still trying to find ways to do that delicately, because I think there are things that when you read, you write, and you move around in society, there's some things that you internalize without realizing. So then writing, you must just purge and see what it looks like on paper and then correct it after you've written it for yourself. So I think I am still trying to find ways, because a woman can just walk down the street and someone can take a picture and then post it online, and then it's just people body shaming. And so it's also just not just in literature, but women to exist as they are, even just in the world. So I'm still navigating and trying to find ways, but I think I'll stop there.
For me, it's of course it's very loaded, but I when I'm writing, I just want to make sure that as a gay writer, as a male gay writer, I have to write about women. There has to be women characters in my books, because I have read a lot of gay literature, and sometimes in them you don't even find women, and I find that very disturbing, because what I am today, because women shaped me, women helped me, and without women, I'm just not what I am today. So I want to make sure that when it comes to the subject, right, I want to make sure that I will always write about women in any sorts of forms. And if I make it or if I fail, I don't know, but I'm curious, and that curiosity might bring me to a dangerous place, but I will always write about women.
Seems like a wonderful place to stop what has been a fantastic panel. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.